TEDx program is all about bringing people together and sharing ideas worth spreading. Although each TEDx sharing is short and sweet, it delivers engaging ideas and powerful messages. Catch the upcoming TedxKL 2014 happening on 9th of August 2014, themed The Open Future. For more details, log on to www.tedxkl.com. Okay, now that the stage is ready, may I invite our speakers together with Ian, our moderator for the Q&A session.
Good morning, everyone. I know it's raining outside, everybody's sleepy, but I hope you guys still paid attention and have lots of questions. But I think first off, we're going to have a big reveal, right? I know Bernie kind of ruined the surprise because she wasn't supposed to show the...
Yeah,
so,
I'm
so excited.
Mine's awesome.
Hers is awesomer. So Kimberly, are we doing the reveal now?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
Dun,
sure.
dun, dun, dun.
Which one do you want to see first? Bernie?
Bernie's my drawing.
That's setting the bar quite high, though.
Hey, I'm not going to shy away from the bar.
Alright, okay. So Bernie's first. Let's go. That's the one?
So, Kavin, do it? Oh, yeah.
There you go. See, Kevin, that's how a pro does it. No.
Wow. Thanks for making me thin.
Nice. Perception,
It's
yes.
uncanny.
Oh,
Let's see.
Oh,
Hold on. We'll be projecting it. Give us a moment.
okay.
Oops.
Okay. So for those of you who haven't seen what Bernie does, this is what she does.
she makes me look thin. That's what she
Yeah,
does.
yeah. So if you want to hire her, she can make you all look thin. It's all the more reason to do it. All right, and now for Kavin's masterpiece.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun,
Here we go.
dun.
Brace yourselves. All right.
Unicorn.
I color outside the lines
It
also.
says,
Yeah.
I draw what people talk at the back. That just sums it up.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
I know, right.
And the second one as well, it's silver.
People are willing to pay.
Yes.
Not bad.
Yes.
Okay, I guess that's what really we're here today to talk about. That creative spark and how our two guests today managed to turn their creativity into profitable business. So the first question, how much do you guys earn? No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. It's all right.
Not
Okay.
enough.
Not enough to be here, right? Okay, the first question, after this we're going to get to your questions really soon, but just to get things rolling, do you think creativity is something that you're born with, something that's natural, or is it something that can be created in someone through some kind of process? What do y'all think? Maybe we start with Bernie?
Well, for myself, I believe, well, all children draw when they're kids. Eventually, they kind of stop doing it. But it's just creativity in a different way. Like Kavin mentioned, you can be a creative engineer. It's not so much a talent, it's a way of thinking. Creative is a way of thinking. So mine is kind of the traditional way of creativity, which is illustration, art, design. But there is a lot of creativity in business, creativity in engineering, creativity in accounts. I'm not sure because that's not a very good thing to get into. But creativity in tax. But yes, it definitely can be kind of brought out into you, and you kind of have to be aware that you have to kind of think outside the lines and kind of challenge the status quo.
So maybe for Kavin, what kind of processes do you have as a comedian to maintain that creativity?
Well, it's basically doing comedy itself, kind of, harnesses that creativity anyway. Now, there's very different ways to do stand-up comedy. Like writing is a very important part of stand-up comedy. Now, there's very different ways. A lot of comedians, what they do, they write the whole set, remember it, and then regurgitate on stage. Now, I do it in a very different manner. Like, I have an idea, and the words come out on stage. So that kind of harnesses my creativity and keeps it fresh. Creativity is like a muscle. If you don't work it every day or every time, it gets weaker and weaker. And if you work it every day, it gets better and better.
Have you seen any comedians who started out really, really bad? No chance at all to be a comedian who just got it.
Exhibit A.
Of course.
I'm living proof that if I can do it, any monkey can do it. You can learn the art of stand-up comedy. You can learn. It's basically very simple. It's very scientific. Like, I believe that art cannot exist without structure, and structure cannot exist without art. Now, the art comes naturally in everyone. Everyone has this. It's just how much you have actually harnessed it. And the structure is something you can learn. So at the end of the day, you can combine the two that you have, and you can be a fantastic comedian. Just not now lah, later. I still need to make money.
Do you think in Malaysia we have an environment, a system, a structure that allows young people to be creative, or do you feel when you guys were growing up in particular, do you feel stifled?
Well, if I ever told my parents when I was 8 years old that, Daddy, I want to be a stand-up comedian, I would get slapped twice and then told I'm going to become a gangster. But yeah, it is stifling. I think the education system in Malaysia, it's very by the book. And at those days, now it may be different, but during when I was growing up, it was very by the book. You learn what you learn to do what you are told to do. And you don't have a lot of ways to become creative. And when I went to the UK to study when I was 17 years old, I realized that, look, what they thought was very different, because they would give you a problem and expect you to solve it by yourself. And if you don't know how to do it, you can ask for advice, come back and try to solve it again. They won't give you the answer, but they will give you the creative method on how to, solve a problem. And that's basically, that's when basically I realized that, look, hold on, I can do this. I can do so many other things because of the same way that I apply solving problems for engineering, I could use to apply to so many other things like stand-up comedy.
For you?
True. Well, for myself, my parents were actually supportive since I was a child. My mom was like super supportive of me illustrating and drawing. And that also happens because my parents are actually educated overseas as well. My mom was a nurse in the UK. She worked there for 6 years. My dad was an engineer in New Zealand. So they're both kind of open to the Western culture of being creative and stuff. But even though they pursued design works on their own, but they support it as, something that's valuable. My mom was always supportive. My dad was more like, you better make money. Yeah, like you better make money. Because even now, they're like, yeah, you want to stay in this house. They don't say it, but obviously you kind of better make things work for yourself. Especially you just stopped doing your degree. You didn't pursue interior design as a career. You're doing your own business. You should, be stable and figure things out on your own. So they're still very supportive. And in Mandarin School, it's very much about definitely by the book more than any other school, I think, in Mandarin School. All my 老师. But it did give me a discipline, and I'm glad I didn't do the art design class thing, because everyone tells me that they tell you the basic thing, which is shading here, shadow here, color there. And most importantly, they also tell you that what you're drawing is wrong. And in drawing, there's not really anything that's wrong. If you draw
that looks wrong.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with drawing, because the way that I draw, most teachers in class would probably be like, oh, you're wrong, that's not good enough, you should do more realistic, you can't do too cartoony, and stuff like that would have just stopped my confidence. I don't want to draw anymore. And that's what many people go through. So I'm kind of lucky that I managed to kind of go below the radar and kind of figure things out on my own over the years before I was ready to really pursue it as a business and not just my little hobby anymore.
I remember our last interview, you said some of your teachers actually told you off for a doodling class,
Oh,
right?
they did. Well, I wasn't paying attention, that's why I draw. And drawing, that's why I draw. But at least I didn't disturb anyone else, I just draw on my own, in my own mind. But, it was one part of the process. You look back, you're like, oh, okay. And teachers in Mandarin School can be quite, hardcore, where they're like, which any of you know Mandarin, they'll tell you, 跟我滚出去, which is, please roll out the door. Literally, please roll out the door. Then they'll just point you in front of the class, they'll just, show you that you should be, and that's what they want, because one teacher instead of 50 people, it's, you need to kind of produce the results. You have this kid drawing in the corner, she's kind of falling off the wagon a bit. So I made it through Mandarin School, I passed somehow, but I do feel that I underachieved because of language as well. But drawing for me was always something that I just did for fun. I never thought it would be a business. Yeah.
Okay, I guess it's a good time to take questions from you guys. Oh, right over there.
Hello. Hello, Adam.
This is Kavin. Now, I think most of us enjoy another Indian comedian, apart from yourself, which is Mr. Russell Peters, the Canadian guy. Now, he managed to export his comedy overseas, right? I think he came here last year, and he did some things in Saudi Arabia, but didn't really take off there because of the Arabs. Very difficult guys to make them laugh, you know. So, do you see the one day that Kevin J will be exportable to various corners of the earth and making a mark there, that kind of thing? That's one. And then another one is, I'm sure the comedians also have writer's block, the dark and stormy night kind of thing. So how do you create your own moments? You mentioned that you don't have, you look for the moments, identify and exploit that, but you don't have, you're short of moments, one of those days, really no moments. How do you create your moments now, Mr. Jet?
All right, the first question, whether Malaysian comedy is exportable. Now, that actually has happened. I have performed all over Asia. Okay. I performed all over Asia. I've performed in India, I performed in Vietnam, Cambodia, Bali, Jakarta, and there's so many places. I've even performed in the US, in this small place called the American Embassy in Jakarta. But we have been performing to international audience as well. And one very, I think, best example is when I went with Harith Iskandar, the premier Malaysian stand-up comedian, to India. And we were worried. We were worried because, can our material about Malaysian life transfer to India? Would they get it? And I realized that many of the times that as Indians, they are the same as us. They had the same childhood as well. We also get beaten up by our parents. We also have different types of obstacles and I realized that, look, it's the same. I can go anywhere and tell the same jokes and they will get it. It's just a little bit more explanation, but usually the audience take it as face value that, okay, this happens, right? And as far as going to the Western world and stuff, we haven't done that yet. However, places like Vietnam, Cambodia, and stuff like that, the comedy is very much for the expat audience. So that is the closest thing I've been to the expat world. But it's a different vibe, though. It's a different vibe because a lot of times, like for instance in Vietnam, the expats there are very hoity-toity. They're higher. I would say they're higher level. They're CEOs and stuff like that. And they I get this vibe that, they see an Asian comic and they go like, oh, an Asian comic. And then they see a white comic, they go, oh yes, a white comic, finally. But then there are expats like in Phnom Penh where, most of them are very humble people. The country itself is a very humble country. And the expats there itself, it's a different vibe. When they see an Asian comic, they really want to know what, Asian life is all about. And I have, people who come from UK, came to my show yesterday and came to me and said, look, you would translate very well in the UK and I think you should go. And I think, yes, it's very much exportable. And I think, it's slowly we are getting there. I think I just did the Singapore Comedy Festival, I did the India Comedy Festival. We are working towards the end of the year, we're doing the Melbourne Comedy Festival. And hopefully the Edinburgh Comedy Festival as well, which is the biggest comedy festival in the world. As for the second part of your question, which was how do I capture the moments? I do it in a very different way. There is school of writings, different school of writings. Some of them can even write without being inspired. They write down things that make them angry. They write down things that make them happy. They write down things that, it's actually a method. You write down all these things and you try to tie them together, right? And that's one way of writing comedy. But I don't do that because I prefer, having this conversation with you can spark a moment. That moment then becomes an idea. That idea then becomes a joke. And then that joke becomes a whole story. you know, and that's how I work. I don't, you know, you know, write out my material like but it happens on stage. That moment happens on stage, and then I roll with it. I see where it goes. Sometimes it doesn't go anywhere. Sometimes, you know, it just becomes one ramble for 2 minutes, and I think to myself, hold on, what am I doing? Maybe I should stop. But yeah, and how do I capture that moment? The moments are everywhere. You just have to know which becomes that moment, you know, how you talk about Russell Peters, you know, and how you know, he's become a phenomenon. He has become a phenomenon because, look, if it wasn't for Russell Peters, there would very rarely be comedians in Asia, because now that guy with that one YouTube video making fun of Asians, now Asians can look at comedy and go, now I relate to this. I know what's going on. He's talking exactly what happens in my house. So now people realize, oh, that means comedy is not just a US thing. It's not just a UK thing. It's not about them. It's about us too. And you know, that's when we started, hold on, we can do comedy as well, and we started doing it. And that's how it works.